Let me tell you about the night everything changed. Amara Tate stood in that museum hallway, 31 years old, with her heart hammering like a war drum, while two security guards blocked every exit. She wore a simple black dress, nothing fancy, because she'd learned long ago that expensive clothes don't buy you respect when your skin makes certain people uncomfortable. Lady Yoon, dripping in diamonds that cost more than most people's houses, pointed one manicured finger straight at Amara's chest and smiled like a snake tasting air. "Search her," Lady Yoon announced, her voice carrying through the marble corridor. The artifact disappeared right after she touched the display schedule. The crowd of donors whispered and stared. Some looked shocked. Others looked satisfied, like they'd been waiting for this moment all along. Amara didn't beg, didn't cry. She lifted her chin, looked Lady Yoon dead in the eyes, and said clearly, "I didn't take anything." Her voice didn't shake. Not yet. The head of security stepped forward, a tall man with cold eyes, and said something that made Amara's blood run cold. "Miss Tate, you need to come with us, now." He knew her full name. He'd been expecting this. They demanded her bag, wanted to dump it out right there in front of everyone, like she was some common thief caught shoplifting. Amara clutched her purse tighter, not because she was hiding anything, but because she understood something the crowd didn't. This wasn't about the bag. This was theater. A performance designed to humiliate her, to make her small, to prove she didn't belong in their world of marble floors and champagne fountains. Lady Yoon gestured gracefully to the watching donors, turning them into an audience for her little show. Amara made a decision. She stopped resisting and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I'll let you search my bag, but only under one condition." Lady Yoon's perfectly painted eyebrows lifted. "You're making demands?" "Same rules for everyone," Amara said, her voice steady as stone. "Search Lady Yoon too. If I'm a suspect, then we're all suspects." The hallway went silent. Lady Yoon laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. "How dare you?" But Amara saw it. For half a second, maybe less, Lady Yoon's smile disappeared. Just a flicker. Just enough to confirm what Amara had suspected. They'd planned this. They'd expected her to fold immediately, to cry and apologize and make their job easy. Lady Yoon's smile returned, colder now. "Fine." Security searched Amara's bag while everyone watched. They pulled out her wallet, her phone, her lipstick, a pack of tissues, her keys. Nothing else. No stolen artifact. No ancient Korean diamond worth millions. Nothing but the ordinary contents of an ordinary woman's ordinary life. The crowd murmured, confused. Lady Yoon didn't panic. If anything, her smile grew sharper. "Then she already passed it off to an accomplice. She must have handed it to someone before we caught her." The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. But before Amara could respond, the museum director, a quiet man named Mr. Cho, who'd always been kind to her, stepped close and whispered words that changed everything. "The diamond went missing before you even arrived tonight." Amara's stomach dropped. Cold shock flooded her veins as understanding crashed over her like a wave. She wasn't a suspect. She was the cover story, the scapegoat. They'd planned to blame her from the beginning, and the timeline proved it. Her hands started shaking. Before she could say anything, before she could defend herself or demand answers, someone spoke behind her. A calm male voice that made her entire body freeze. "This is finished." Amara knew that voice. She'd know it anywhere, in any crowd, even after months of keeping their relationship completely private. Her heart lurched. He shouldn't be here. He never appeared at public events. That was their unspoken rule. He stayed in shadows while she worked in the light. But there he was. June stepped into view, moving through the crowd like he owned the air itself. He wore a dark suit, perfectly tailored, and his face showed no emotion at all. Just calm. Dangerous calm. The head of security immediately straightened his spine. Not like he was preparing to fight, like a soldier who'd just seen his commanding officer arrive. Lady Yoon's eyes widened. Not with fear exactly, with recognition. She knew him, or knew of him. June didn't look at her. His eyes found Amara's face and stayed there, checking for injuries, for tears, for damage. She wanted to ask him why he'd come. Wanted to warn him to leave before he connected himself to her publicly. Wanted to understand what was happening. But before she could speak, everything escalated. A guard reached for Amara's wrist, intending to escort her away for further questioning. June's voice cut through the hallway. Take your hand off her. The guard froze. His fingers were inches from Amara's wrist, but he didn't complete the motion. He didn't grab her. He just stood there, his hand trembling slightly in midair, like he'd touched an electric fence and couldn't quite pull away. June hadn't raised his voice, hadn't threatened violence. He'd simply spoken 4 words in that same calm tone, and the guard had stopped like his strings had been cut. Not because he feared a fight. Amara could see it in his eyes. He feared consequences. The kind that came later, in quieter places, when powerful people decided you'd made a mistake. She stared at June, really seeing him for the first time. Not as the man who brought her coffee at midnight while she worked on translation projects. Not as the person who listened when she talked about her mother back home, or her messy divorce, or her student loans. This was someone different. Someone people obeyed without asking questions. Her stomach twisted. Lady Yoon recovered quickly, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle and fake. "And who are you supposed to be? Her boyfriend?" The word sounded like an insult in her mouth. June didn't answer. He just looked at Lady Yoon the way you'd look at something small and temporary, here today and gone tomorrow. Then he did something that made Amara's breath catch. June reached for Amara's hand. Not roughly, gently, like she was something precious and fragile. He pressed something small and cool into her palm, a platinum ring. Amara looked down. Inside the band, a single Korean character was engraved. She'd been learning the language slowly over the past months, late-night lessons while they talked, and she recognized this word immediately. Mine. The crowd gasped. Whispers exploded around them like firecrackers. But Amara's reaction wasn't swooning or gratitude. A flash of anger cut through her fear. She pulled her hand back, the ring still resting in her palm, and looked at him with something close to betrayal. "Don't do that," she said, her voice low but fierce. "Not here, not like this. Don't claim me like property in front of these people." June's jaw tightened. For a second, he looked almost hurt. Then his expression hardened again. "I have to," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because they need to know what happens if they touch you." Before Amara could argue, before she could tell him she didn't want to be protected like this, Lady Yoon made her next move. She turned to the crowd and announced, her voice ringing clear and cold, "Amara Tate is fired, effective immediately. Fired, at a gala, in front of Seoul's wealthiest donors and museum patrons." Amara felt the words like a slap, sharp and public, and designed to humiliate. "She's a liability to this institution," Lady Yoon continued, addressing the crowd like a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. "We cannot have someone under investigation for theft representing our cultural programs." Amara's mouth went dry. Fired. Just like that. No hearing, no chance to defend herself. Just a public execution of her career. The museum director, Mr. Cho, moved quietly through the crowd. He slipped a manila folder into Amara's shaking hands and whispered, "I'm sorry. This was never about consulting. You were hired as a shield." Amara opened the folder with trembling fingers. Inside were contracts she'd signed 6 months ago when she'd first arrived in Seoul. But now, seeing them together, she understood what she'd missed. Buried in the dense legal language were clauses about public blame assignment and liability transfer. Hidden among the employment terms were 3 shell companies listed as her payment sources, designed to make it look like she'd accepted money from questionable sources. She'd been trapped. Legally, professionally, completely. Her vision blurred. Not with tears, with rage. 6 months earlier, Amara had arrived in Seoul carrying 1 suitcase and enough debt to crush her. The divorce had taken everything except her expertise in cultural artifact preservation. When the consulting contract arrived, offering twice her old salary plus housing, it felt like salvation. She remembered sitting in Lady Yoon's pristine office, overlooking the city's glittering skyline, while the woman smiled warmly and said, "We need your expertise, Miss Tate, your unique perspective." At the time, Amara had believed it. Had wanted to believe that someone finally valued her skills instead of judging her skin. Now she understood. Unique perspective meant perfect scapegoat. Foreign. Black. No connections in Korea. Easy to blame and easier to dispose of. The shell company payments made sense now too. She'd wondered why her paychecks came through 3 different sources, but her assigned accountant had assured her it was standard for international contracts. She trusted him. That trust had built her cage. She remembered the day everything started to shift. About 3 months into her contract, a man had requested a private meeting. She'd assumed he was another board member. But when June walked into that conference room, something felt different. He didn't talk like the others. Didn't perform politeness. He just asked direct questions and listened carefully to her answers. That first meeting, June had offered her additional work. Quiet consulting, he'd called it. Cultural verification for private collections. Very well paid. The money he'd mentioned was staggering. More than she made in 3 months of museum work. Amara had looked at him across that conference table and made a choice. I won't lie for anyone, she'd said clearly. I won't authenticate forgeries or hide provenance. I fix problems without becoming one. She'd expected him to withdraw the offer. Most people wanted experts they could control. Instead, June had leaned back in his chair and something in his expression shifted. Relief. Like he'd been testing her and she'd finally given the right answer. Then, you're the only person I can trust, he'd said. That's how it started. Not with romance, with respect. He'd hired her for legitimate work, evaluating pieces for private collectors who wanted to ensure they weren't buying stolen artifacts. She'd been thorough, honest, sometimes telling wealthy buyers that their precious acquisitions were worthless fakes. June never pressured her to change her assessments. Never asked her to bend her ethics. Slowly, carefully, they'd become something more than professional contacts. But they'd kept it private. Seoul's high society didn't need to know. It was safer that way. Or so she'd thought. 3 months ago, Amara had been working late, organizing inventory in the museum's basement. She'd heard a crash and found an older woman in a cleaning uniform struggling with a dropped serving tray. Food and broken dishes scattered across the floor. No one else was around. The woman looked exhausted, her hands shaking. Amara had knelt down immediately and started helping her pick up the pieces. Here, let me get that. Are you hurt? The woman had studied her face carefully. You don't have to help. I know, Amara had said, smiling, but those dishes are heavy, and you look tired. They'd cleaned up together in silence. When they finished, the woman had said something strange. You don't perform kindness, you live it. Amara hadn't understood what she meant. Later that evening, leaving through the staff exit, she'd seen that same cleaning woman enter a private elevator with museum executives. The woman wore different clothes now, expensive ones. She'd moved differently too. Confident, powerful. The woman wasn't staff. She'd been watching, testing. Amara had felt uneasy, but hadn't mentioned it to anyone. Seoul had taught her that powerful people played games she didn't always understand. Now, standing in this hallway with a ring in her palm and her career in ruins, she wondered if that moment had mattered. If anything she'd done had mattered, or if she'd been doomed from the start. The sabotage had started small. Emails mysteriously disappeared from her inbox. Meetings got rescheduled without anyone telling her. Documents she'd prepared would appear on her supervisor's desk with subtle changes that made her look incompetent. Lady Yoon's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Miss Kim, would smile sweetly while doing it. Oh, didn't you get the memo about the time change? Strange. I sent you that file last week. Are you sure you saved the correct version? Amara had documented everything quietly. Screenshots, forwarded emails, backup files stored in her personal cloud. She'd worked in corporate America long enough to know how to protect herself. But then things escalated. She discovered her signature had been forged on a donation request. Someone had authorized a transfer of museum funds to a cultural preservation charity that didn't exist. The paperwork looked official, complete with her supposed approval. Amara had gone cold when she found it. This wasn't petty harassment. This was a setup. She'd started collecting proof more carefully then. Building a case, preparing for whatever was coming. Then immigration had sent her a routine notice, requesting additional visa documentation. Then her bank had flagged her account for unusual deposits. The trap was closing. She'd felt it tightening around her like a noose. She'd confronted June. Finally asked the question she'd been avoiding. Who are you really? June had taken her to a quiet restaurant, private room, no windows. He'd sat across from her and been silent for a long time, like he was choosing which pieces of truth to share. My family has operated in Seoul for 3 generations, he'd finally said. We started in shipping, import, export. Over time, we diversified. Amara had waited. Some of those diversifications weren't legal, June continued. My grandfather built an empire that operated in shadows. My father expanded it. I inherited both the legitimate businesses and the complicated ones. Complicated, Amara had repeated. That's a careful word. I'm trying to exit certain operations, June had said, meeting her eyes. But people don't want me to. There's too much money involved. Too many relationships built on illegal foundations. What kind of operations? He'd hesitated. The kind where people use cultural artifacts to move money, use charity foundations to launder profits, use museums to legitimize stolen property. Amara's stomach had dropped. Is that why you hired me, to help you? No. His voice had been sharp. I hired you because I need someone who can't be bought, someone who will tell me the truth about what I'm dealing with. I'm trying to clean up my family's legacy, but I can't do it blind. She'd wanted to believe him. Then why are they targeting me? Because they know you matter to me, June had said quietly. And they're trying to force me back into line. Back in the present moment, standing in that museum hallway with Lady Yoon's announcement still echoing, Amara watched as a police liaison arrived. Not a regular officer. Someone higher ranking, someone who moved like this was all arranged in advance. He approached Amara with professionally fake sympathy. Miss Tate, we need you to come to the station for questioning. Just routine. June stepped between them. On what grounds? Suspected theft of cultural property, the liaison said smoothly. We have protocols for this. Amara realized what was happening. This wasn't an arrest. It was a disappearance. They'd take her somewhere quiet, hold her for questioning, and by the time anyone asked where she was, the story would already be written. Foreign consultant caught stealing. Case closed. Her throat tightened. June leaned close to her and whispered, They're trying to make you disappear legally. Can they do that? They're trying to. Amara's mind raced. Then she remembered. That afternoon, she'd recorded a translation session for a donor tour. She'd used a small digital recorder because her phone's storage was full. The recorder was still in her jacket pocket. She'd been wearing it all evening. Her heart started pounding for a different reason now. Very carefully, she reached into her pocket and pressed the record button. Lady Yoon was speaking quietly to someone near her. A man who looked like he might be her cousin. The recorder caught it. Make sure she takes the fall. Before anyone could move Amara away, a new voice cut through the tension. Older. Female. Commanding. Enough. Everyone turned. The cleaning woman Amara had helped 3 months ago stood at the edge of the crowd. Except she wasn't dressed like cleaning staff anymore. She wore an elegant hanbok, traditional Korean dress, perfectly tailored and clearly expensive. Her posture had changed completely. She stood like someone used to being obeyed. She walked forward and the crowd parted. My name is Madam Park, she said, her English flawless and accent-free. And this performance is over. Lady Yoon's face went white. She tried to bow. Madam Park, I didn't know you were. You didn't know many things, Madam Park interrupted. She turned to Amara and smiled, a real smile, warm and approving. Miss Tate, do you still have that recorder in your pocket? Amara blinked. How did she? Play it, Madam Park said. Let everyone hear what was said. With shaking hands, Amara pulled out the small device and pressed play. Lady Yoon's voice filled the hallway, crystal clear. Make sure she takes the fall. The crowd erupted in whispers. Lady Yoon stammered. That's out of context. Madam Park held up one hand. Silence fell immediately. She produced a tablet and pulled up documents. Museum inventory logs, security access records, timestamps. The diamond was removed from the vault 3 days ago, Madam Park announced, long before tonight's gala, before Miss Tate even knew about this event. The proof was devastating. Security footage showed Lady Yoon's cousin entering the vault during off hours. Transfer records showed the artifact being moved to a private storage facility. Email chains discussed the framing opportunity at tonight's gala. Amara stared at the evidence, pure rage flowing through her veins. They'd planned this for weeks. Hired her 6 months ago specifically to have a scapegoat ready when they needed one. Lady Yoon tried to recover. This is clearly a misunderstanding. We can resolve this privately, negotiate. No, Amara said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through Lady Yoon's pleading like a knife. You tried to destroy me publicly. so we clear my name publicly. The police liaison immediately spoke up. That recording may not be admissible evidence. There are laws about. June turned to look at him. Just looked. And when he spoke, his voice was conversational, almost friendly. Officer Che, your supervisor is Commissioner Huang, correct? I believe there's an internal affairs file on your desk right now regarding improper evidence handling in 3 previous cases. The liaison went pale. I suggest you walk away, June continued calmly, before you lose your pension. Officer Che stepped back. Then he turned and walked away completely, disappearing into the crowd. Amara's hands were shaking, not with fear. With the shock of watching June dismantle someone with pure information. No violence, just knowledge wielded like a weapon. Lady Yoon finally understood. She'd provoked the wrong man. Security began clearing the hallway, trying to restore order. The gala was clearly over. Donors were leaving in clusters, whispering urgently on their phones. Lady Yoon stood frozen, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. Then a side door opened, a fire exit, meant only for emergencies. A man in museum staff uniform stepped out. He moved too quickly, too purposefully. He grabbed Amara's elbow hard, yanking her toward the exit. Come with me. Mr. June sent me. Amara's training kicked in, 6 years of self-defense classes after her ex-husband got violent. She stomped her heel down on his instep with all her weight, twisted her arm free, and screamed for the security guard standing 10 feet away. Officer Kang, this man is assaulting me. She'd read his name badge earlier. Always noticed details, always prepared. The guard reacted immediately. Other security converged. The fake staff member tried to run, but they caught him. June's face transformed. The calm mask cracked, showing something cold and furious underneath. He moved toward the captured man like a predator, but Amara grabbed his sleeve. Stop, he looked at her. No civilians, she said firmly. No revenge on random people. Find out who ordered it. Do this smart, not violent. June's jaw worked. His men were watching, waiting for orders. He could have ignored her. Could have done this his way. Instead, he nodded. Find who ordered it, he told his security team. Then he looked at Amara. Your rule. Madam Park smiled approvingly. Good, now we do this clean. Over the next 3 days, evidence flowed to prosecutors like a river. Financial records appeared on investigators' desks. Audit requests were filed with government agencies. Donors started asking questions about where their contributions had actually gone. Lady Yoon's foundation was frozen pending investigation. Her cousin was arrested trying to sell the stolen diamond to a buyer in Hong Kong. She tried to flee the country. Immigration stopped her at the airport with a travel hold. No explanation given, just orders from somewhere higher up the chain. Amara watched it unfold from June's private office, her temporary sanctuary, while the legal wheels turned. She should have felt relief, victory. Instead, she felt dread. Because 3 days after the gala, a letter arrived for her. Official government letterhead. Your visa review has been reopened pending investigation of your employment contracts. She stared at the words. They weren't done. Someone else was still pulling strings, someone who hadn't been caught yet. June read the letter over her shoulder. His expression darkened. This isn't Lady Yoon, he said. She's finished. This is someone bigger. Who? Someone on the museum board. Someone who profits from what Lady Yoon was doing, but stayed in the shadows while she took the risks. Amara's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered carefully. A smooth male voice spoke. Miss Tate? My name is Director Bay. I think we should meet. Director Bay chose a private club for their meeting. Old money, wood paneling, the kind of place where decisions that shaped Korea's economy were made over whiskey and silence. Amara almost didn't go. June wanted to come with her, but she refused. If I can't handle this meeting alone, then I've already lost, she told him. Madam Park had nodded approvingly. She's right, and she won't be alone. She'll be recorded. They wired her carefully. Tiny microphone, hidden camera in her watch. Legal in Korea as long as one party consented, and Amara definitely consented. Director Bay was older, distinguished, with silver hair and a kind face that probably fooled most people. He stood when she entered, gestured to a leather chair, offered her expensive tea she didn't drink. Miss Tate, this situation has become unfortunate, he began smoothly. Lady Yoon acted rashly. She's being dealt with appropriately. She didn't act alone, Amara said. Indeed, which is why I wanted to speak with you. He leaned forward, his expression sympathetic. You've been caught in something that isn't your fault. Your visa problems, your legal troubles, they can all disappear, completely. In exchange for what? Testify that Mr. June coerced you, that he forced you to participate in illegal artifact trades. The prosecutors have been trying to build a case against his family for years. With your testimony, they can finally succeed. Amara's blood ran cold. You want me to lie? I want to restore your life, Director Bay corrected gently. Your career, your reputation, your future, all of it back, better than before. Amara looked at Director Bay across that expensive table and understood finally what she was dealing with. Not just corruption, a system, a machine that ate people like her and people like June, maintaining itself by turning victims against each other. She thought about her mother back home who needed help with medical bills, thought about her student loans, thought about how easy it would be to just say yes, to let them have June, to save herself. She thought about June reading to her in Korean, patiently teaching her words while they sat in his apartment overlooking the city. Thought about him admitting his family's crimes and asking her to help him find a way out. Thought about him choosing her rule over his instinct for revenge. She touched her watch, making sure it was recording, and spoke clearly. I want to be very clear, Director Bay. You're asking me to provide false testimony against June in exchange for making my legal problems disappear. Problems that you created by having me hired through shell companies. Director Bay's kind expression flickered. I wouldn't phrase it quite that way. How would you phrase it? I'm offering you an opportunity to cooperate with authorities. By lying. By telling a version of truth that serves justice. Amara stood up. Record this meeting, she said to the empty air. Record what was just offered to me. Conspiracy to suborn perjury, witness tampering, attempted coercion. Director Bay's face transformed. The kindness vanished. You're making a mistake. No, Amara said. You did. The recordings went to 3 different prosecutors, copies to journalists at 2 major newspapers. Backups to lawyers Madam Park had arranged. Director Bay tried to claim the conversation was privileged, that Amara had recorded it illegally, that she'd misunderstood his intentions. But Amara had learned from watching June. She'd documented everything. Times, locations, witnesses who'd seen her enter the club. More importantly, once investigators started looking at Director Bay, they found connections everywhere. Shell companies linked to his family, artifacts that had passed through his hands, donations that disappeared into accounts he controlled. The cultural artifact trafficking operation had been running for over a decade. Lady Yoon had been the public face, the respectable museum director who could move pieces without raising suspicion. But Director Bay had been the architect, the money behind it, the power that kept it safe. Until now. The trial moved quickly, by Korean standards. Lady Yoon's cousin flipped immediately, providing detailed testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. Financial analysts traced money through 17 different accounts. Art experts identified 40 stolen pieces that had passed through the museum. Amara testified, not against June, about the documents, the forged signatures, the systematic setup she'd walked into. June didn't testify at all. He sat in the gallery watching, and that was enough. Everyone knew who he was now, knew his family's history. But the prosecutors had nothing concrete linking him to this specific crime, because he hadn't committed it. The verdict came on a Tuesday afternoon. Lady Yoon was sentenced to 8 years for fraud, conspiracy, and witness intimidation. Director Bae got 12 years plus asset forfeiture. 17 other people received sentences ranging from probation to 5 years. The museum underwent complete restructuring. New board, new director, new policies requiring transparent provenance for every piece. Amara's visa was secured, properly this time, through legitimate channels. Her name was cleared publicly, with official statements from the prosecutor's office acknowledging she'd been an unwitting victim and crucial witness. She stood outside the courthouse in afternoon sunlight, her hands shaking from exhaustion and relief. Reporters shouted questions, but she ignored them. June was waiting at the bottom of the steps. He didn't approach, just stood there, giving her space to decide. Madam Park appeared beside her. You won, the older woman said quietly. Not because of my nephew's power, because of your spine. Did you know? Amara asked. When I helped you with that tray, did you know all of this was coming? I knew they'd hired you as a shield, Madam Park admitted. I didn't know exactly when they'd use you, but I needed to see what kind of person you were, if you'd survive what was coming. You tested me. I watched you win, Madam Park corrected. She smiled. Now comes the interesting part. The interesting part was a job offer. Madam Park wanted to rebuild the cultural preservation programs, but properly this time. Real funding, real oversight, real commitment to protecting Korean heritage instead of exploiting it. We need someone who can't be bought, she explained over tea in her elegant sitting room. Someone the international community will trust. Someone with spine. Amara looked at the contract. It was generous, more than generous. And completely transparent, no shell companies, no hidden clauses, just honest work for honest pay. Why me? She asked. Because you helped an old woman with a dropped tray when no one was watching. Because you refused to lie even when it would have saved you. Because you told my nephew to choose justice over revenge. Madam Park sipped her tea calmly. Those aren't common qualities. What about June? Amara asked. What happens with him? That's between you and him, Madam Park said. But I'll tell you this. My nephew has spent his entire life trying to escape his father's shadow. You're the first person who made him believe it was possible. Whatever you decide, decide for yourself. Not for him. Not for me. Amara took the contract home, thought about it for 3 days. Then she signed it. The new Cultural Protection Program launched 6 months later. Independent. Funded by seized assets from the convicted traffickers. Transparent accounting, regular audits, advisory board with representatives from international preservation organizations. Amara ran it with the same integrity she'd brought to everything else. When wealthy collectors applied for authentication services, she told them the truth, even when it meant losing their business. When donors tried to buy influence, she returned their money. The program grew anyway, because people trusted it. Because Amara had built something that couldn't be corrupted. Lady Yoon's old donors had to apply through proper channels now if they wanted access to Korean cultural artifacts. Some of them complained. Some of them tried to go around her. None of them succeeded. Poetic justice, Amara thought. The woman they'd tried to destroy now controlled the gates they needed to pass through. She saw June regularly. Not secretly anymore. They went to dinner, walked through parks, attended exhibitions together. Seoul's high society whispered about them. Some disapproved, some were curious. All of them were careful. Because everyone knew now that the quiet man in the expensive suit was someone you didn't cross. And the woman beside him had proven she couldn't be broken. One evening, June took Amara to the museum where everything had started. They walked through galleries she'd helped curate, past artifacts she'd authenticated. I've divested from the last of the illegal operations. He told her quietly. It took months. Cost me relationships with people my father trusted, but it's done. How do you? She asked. Lighter, he admitted, and terrified. I don't know how to be just a businessman. I've always been the monster people feared. Amara stopped walking. She turned to face him fully. You're not a monster, June. Monsters don't choose to change. They don't listen to the people they love. They don't build legitimate futures. I'm trying, he said, to be someone worthy of you. You don't have to earn me, she said softly. You just have to be honest with me. He pulled out the platinum ring he tried to give her 6 months ago, the one with the Korean character engraved inside. I said this wrong before, he said. In that hallway, I tried to claim you like property. You did. Let me try again. He held the ring carefully. This character means mine, but in Korean it also means together. It's about belonging to each other, not ownership. I want to belong to you, Amara, if you'll have me. She looked at the ring, at him, at the future they could build if she was brave enough. Yes, she said. They married quietly. Small ceremony, close friends only. Madam Park cried, which surprised everyone. Amara's mother flew in from the States, her medical bills paid by the health insurance from Amara's new legitimate job. Her sister came too, finishing her master's degree in art history. The wedding was in a traditional Korean garden, but Amara wore a dress that honored both her heritage and her new home. They wrote their own vows in both English and Korean. When June slipped the ring on her finger, he whispered, Together. Together, she repeated. The Cultural Protection Program continued growing. They opened offices in 3 countries, recovered stolen artifacts, trained new preservationists, built databases that made trafficking harder. Amara's old colleagues, the ones who'd sabotaged her work and smiled while doing it, saw her on international news as an expert on cultural preservation. Some of them tried to reconnect. She was polite but distant. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. June transformed his family's legitimate businesses into something actually respectable. Technology investments, real estate development, shipping companies that didn't smuggle anything. Sometimes people still feared him. Old habits, old reputations. But Amara would watch him reading reports in their apartment, or arguing with Madame Park about charitable giving, or learning to cook her mother's recipes, and she'd see the truth. He wasn't the untouchable crime boss anymore. He was just June, her husband, her partner, her choice, and she was Amara, not a victim, not a shield, not someone else's scapegoat, just herself. Finally, free. The end.